So thank you so much for having me this evening. It was great to see the former directors of our Teacher Center and to be here for part of that celebration. And I have to say, I was hired here as a very young green teacher right out of Nazareth College here to teach 7th grade social studies when we were Pittsford Middle School. And Mr. David Vitale was my mentor, and he's here tonight as part of our Pittsford Retired Teachers Association. And I know that I'm indebted to him as well as many of us who he mentored over the years. So thank you so much for always being here and the continued commitment to Pittsford schools. And now in my 5th year as a principal at Barker Road, it's amazing to look back as I was putting this presentation together and looking at our 2 buckets of goals of response to intervention and social emotional learning that we've had over the years, and to see how those goals have continued to bring us new challenges to take on and how we've continued to grow in those. So I'm looking forward to taking you through our journey through our response to intervention and our social emotional goals. So I'm going to start with our RTI, or response to intervention goals. And this is how we started each year, actually, over the last several years, of just following our history with these goals with our staff. So starting with our values and creating a mission together collectively as a staff and with our students, and using that to really ground us along the way has been so helpful. And throughout the years, we've taken our mission and then looked at the research and the data that has supported our values, and looking at Hattie's research, looking at the solution tree trainings that the district has been able to bring to us to move our PLC work forward. And then each year, we looked at the 4 PLC questions and took 1 question per year just to chunk it in a way that felt more manageable and to allow our PLC teams to be able to really work at their own pace. And so over the last few years, we focused first on the first question of what do we expect students to learn, and then last year on how will we know that they've learned it, how will we assess that, and then this year we're focusing on questions 3 and 4. So last year in the fall, during our Superintendent's Day in October, we had teachers start to just begin to assess where we were, knowing that teams were working in different places and at different rates. So they took any of the items that they were working on. We studied these 7 different stages of collaboration, and they placed them along that continuum just to see where are we. And we noticed that even though we were only focusing on looking at those essential questions, that we had really started to move into developing common assessments, which was great to see. And so this year we took that in a little bit of a different way and did kind of a digital Post-it sticky activity. So we had them send me via a SurveyMonkey 1 item they were working on, and then I took and virtually Post-it noted the same 7 stages, and took some of the things that they were doing and broke them out, and really having staff be able to come and share with us what they've been working on and to share with each other, so that we can see that along the way it really is okay to be in your own place, because really as people are in their own places and they're re-energized by their work, we're really moving farther and farther along that continuum. So some of the common assessments, some of the benchmarks and spirals that our math department's been working on that I'll talk to you about in a moment, and a lot of the things that teachers have been able to do together and to find time to work together to be able to not only create common assessments for students, but now start to say, what do we do with that data that we're getting? So really that's our goal this year, is to be able to say, how do we take those common assessments, analyze the results, and find some time to be able to work together to make decisions about our instruction. So these are the 2 questions that we're working on this year. How will we respond if students haven't learned those essentials? And how will we respond if they've already learned it and they're already there when we begin our learning? So the first thing we decided that we needed to do was to create some time, or to try and look flexibly at our time to see, we need time to be able to have the conversations about the student data, and then we need to have the time to be able to work with students. And so we wanted to experiment with something called Wintime, what I need time, some flexible time for teachers to work with students and then also for teachers to work together. But we wanted to make sure that when we have that time, we know what we're doing with that time. And so we've had teachers along the way at faculty meetings and at Superintendent's Day be able to share some of the examples of what they're doing. And so I have their slides that they used just at our past Superintendent's Day that our English and math departments shared. So this is an example from our 7th grade ELA PLC team, and this is one of the rubrics that they've used to be able to get some more common understanding and areas of focus for students across teachers. So all 3 teachers who teach all of our 7th graders are using the same areas of focus, and then they're using them amongst and between all of the different writing assignments that they're doing throughout the year. So as they were having conversations in their PLC, they noticed that when they were looking at mood, that was something that there was a big chunk of students that they needed additional practice, needed additional instruction in how to incorporate mood into their pieces and how to recognize it in other pieces. And then there was another chunk of students that already had that and that they were ready to move on to other pieces. So this was an example that Jill Wall gave at our Superintendent's Day of they had 3 teachers, 1 special education teacher who's on their PLC, and the other 2 English teachers. They took the other students and broke them up and worked on incorporating mood into their writing and recognizing mood. And then she worked with a group of students who were ready to move on, and she gave them some enriching activities using figurative language in their writing. And then this is the other piece that they shared with us this is the student piece, the reflection piece that mirrors that teacher rubric. So the students are actually not only capturing their progress in those different areas in one writing assignment, but you can see that they're able to do that throughout their writing assignments for the year, so that they're able to make connections between the progress they're making as they're writing throughout the year. And this has really been a great way to focus the teacher and student writing conferences that have been happening, and a great way to really have students reflect on their own progress throughout the year. In our math department in 6th grade, they've been doing a lot of things with common assessments. They've been giving common weekly spirals, which are weekly assignments that students get to bring some of those basic skills to repeat them throughout the year, so they're getting multiple exposures to the skills that are very essential. And then they give common benchmarks every 5 weeks. And these are formative assessments that are used to monitor the student progress, but also to inform the instruction of the teachers. And as they look at those, they've been looking at them together and actually exporting them into these big spreadsheets. This is our math department, mind you. And they look at then all of the commonly missed questions that are occurring on the benchmarks. And the benchmarks, again, are the assessments that are assessing the most essential information that they've decided on together. And so then they look at all of that information and they decide, was this a bad question? Is it something that's happening in this particular group? Is there something that one teacher is doing that's really great, that's working really well, that other people can learn from? Or do the kids just need more exposure, or is there something else going on? So some of the things that they've been doing is looking across and saying, okay, this question seems to be an issue even in our honors classes all the way down to every other class. So let's start incorporating it into those weekly spirals. Let's incorporate it into our warm-ups every day. Let's make some different decisions together. So this is how they explain to us how they answer that question number 3. How will we respond if students haven't learned this information? So as I said, they're adding those questions in. They are using our enrichment period to reteach or to extend any of that learning for our students, to let parents know if there's something that is out there that they really may be able to help support a little bit better at home, or to be able to say, there's maybe one teacher who's really hitting it out of the park, and is there something they're doing differently that the other teachers on that PLC can learn from? The teachers in our math department at 6th grade have seen a 25% increase in student achievement on the benchmark assessments for these particular areas when they've been adding them in to the weekly spirals and to the benchmarks and to their daily warm-ups, just from having these conversations together and just looking at the data. And so was pretty astounding to us as they shared it just last month. And then question number 4, which is just as important, those students who've already learned it, what are we doing with them? That's great. We can move on to the next unit with them, or we can find time to extend things within enrichment. We can eliminate some things. So if they already know it, then we don't need to keep asking it over and over again, but being responsive to that group of students as well. And they're also using some students as peer teachers and coaches with each other, which has been really successful. So really our next steps with this, I think, is to continue to focus on questions 3 and 4 because there's so much there and we need to spend more time really practicing how we're looking at student work and giving more and more teams the opportunity to share all of the things that they're doing. And I think as teams are becoming more and more confident in what they're doing, they're realizing that they have some really great things that are going on and it looks so different in each team and they're all getting so many different ideas from each other. So now that we have an idea of what we're doing during extra time, we had to kind of create that time, which I was really excited about last year at this time when we created our CAP goal for this year and said we want to trial Wintime. And then at the beginning of this year, when we realized we had to logistically put this together and get everybody on board and schedule it and do it in Infinite Campus, it felt a little bit like stepping off of a cliff. And so without the help of our tech department, Kathy Kaufman and Gwen Sabinski coming in and really making it seamless to have every teacher in the school create their own WIN session, to have everything available to do attendance right in Infinite Campus. There weren't kids walking around the hall with nowhere to go, which was a fear of some of ours. It was really very seamless. What we ended up having is 2 separate WIN days. So one of the days we had half of the teachers working with all of the students, and the other half of the teachers were working in their PLC teams to have extra PLC time together. It was a 45-minute block. And then the other day we had the opposite groups working with students and having their PLC time. So there were so many examples as we were going around. There were, I think one of the greatest things was teachers getting to work with kids that weren't on their roster. And that's really the point of it, of having all kids available for all teachers, is that we're looking at the skill areas that kids need, not just who's on my roster. So you see we have 2 social studies teachers who've been doing a lot of work on formative assessment together through the Monroe Assessment Project. They had all of these kids in a classroom, and I walked in and thought, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And there's 2 teachers in there, and they had the kids working on these really engaging current political cartoons and then mirroring those with political cartoons and propaganda examples from history that they were studying, and the conversations they were having and their ability, the 2 of them, to be able to get around and have those conversations, and just the feeling of having kids in different places with different teachers was something really exciting. We have Mrs. Cole up there with one of our 8th grade groups on WIN Day, and this was a group of students who she described as being just on the cusp of being in honors, and she actually talked to the kids about that and about how looking at their formative assessments that they're just right there, and so had this extra time with them, and the invigoration that they felt in being chosen as part of that group and getting that extra time with her to be able to extend their learning was really great. And then again, at the same time, we had teachers working together on their PLC goals. So our next steps, we actually today at our ILT started looking at the data from our WIN Day trials. So we had surveys that followed this. Our students all took surveys through Microsoft Forms, and our teachers did the same thing. So now we have a lot of data, and we just started looking at that today. We have a lot of comments and narratives that we're just starting to go through just to make decisions about, is this something that we feel like was successful? Is it something that we need to incorporate into our CAP goals for next year? How does it help us with questions 3 and 4? Does it help us? And where does it fit in, or do we need to tweak it? Or are there different ways that we should be using the time we already have to accomplish some of these goals? So to be continued. Some of our other social emotional goals, as we get into our social emotional goals, I should say, a couple of things I wanted to just touch on, and then really our year has been focused around inclusivity, but there's a couple of great things that have happened that I wouldn't want to miss. So last year, you heard us talk about some of the ILT subgroups that we had broken up for our SEL goals. One of them was on mindfulness, and we had talked about the importance of having common language for mindfulness for students, so it wasn't just a one-time thing that happened in health class or on the morning announcements or in one of their classes. And so this year that really came to fruition when our health teachers in their PLCs working with Calkins Road came up with these 3 visuals. There are 3 posters that are in every classroom in the school, and they provide visuals to remind students about the mindfulness techniques and strategies that they've learned in these 3 different buckets. And it's really reminders for students, but also for staff, because we've learned about a lot of these things. Our health teachers have been amazing. They've been coming into faculty meetings and doing mindfulness activities throughout with teachers when they need calm or when they need focus at the end of the day before a faculty meeting. And so these are up in the classroom to remind students of the strategies that they know that we want to encourage them to access at any point, but then also for teachers when kids are coming in out of lunch and they are maybe needing a little more calm, or first thing in the morning when maybe they need a little bit more energy, and then teachers can look at it and be reminded of some of the quick strategies that they can do that take 30 seconds or less that just help to retrain our brains. Thanks to the work of, Calkins Road and Barker Road working together, but from the support of KEEP, we were able to bring in Scott Fitch to talk to our students both at Calkins and at Barker Road. And Scott is a nationally known U.S. men's basketball coach and is very popular with the kids. They loved him, and he loved talking to them. But he comes and talks about social media and about making good choices in social media and in life, and some of the things that have happened with his players along the way and the impact that has had. So it was really powerful. And this was something that we were able to bring in last month for our students right at the time of year when sometimes they need those reminders the most. So he was really great, and it is a great way to have all of our middle school students have had this same message is a really positive starting point to be able to keep that work and the message moving forward. And as I said, the rest of our work this year, the bulk of our work has really been around inclusivity. And we had a group of students this year. We started a Inclusivity Council of Students early on in the year. We had students apply to be a part of this council, and they've worked with myself, with some of our psychologists and teachers, first to get together to create some norms together, to create some activities that we could do together, and then to create some activities for the school and to have some focus for this year, and to make sure that we had something that we could keep building on, because what we really wanted to do was to have everyone in the school recognize that we can always do better in the area of inclusivity. And so this group, I think what we learned the most together as we were doing some of the diversity activities together is that honoring each other's stories and each other's history is really the most important part of making people feel included. And the bond that we've been able to create in that small group has been great because we've had just the opportunity to have a space to have some of those important conversations. So we want to find a way to be able to bring that into the bigger school community. And part of what the kids wanted to do was to not take everything on themselves, but to bring in some of the other groups who are already doing great work, our GSA, our Best Buddies, our Student Council. And so it's really been a great partnership, and a partnership across both schools as well. So one of the things around Best Buddies, we had the Spread the Word to End the Word month was happening around the same time as Best Buddies, as Unified Basketball. And so Best Buddies came and created this hashtag choosing to spread inclusion motto, and having an inclusion pledge that kids could take at school. And so we had students who took the inclusion pledge. They thought of ways that they could be more inclusive to other students in school that are different to them. And then we had this great banner that was presented at the Unified Basketball game that students, parents, community members could all sign. And it was just a great visual to represent some of our work. One of the other things that Best Buddies did that was so amazing this year is they got together and brought in more students who aren't even part of Best Buddies, and they created posters specific to our students who were playing in the Unified Basketball game, and presented the posters to the students after they cheered them on during the game. And I don't know who was more excited to give the posters and to receive the posters. They were just so pumped to be there and to be celebrating their peers, and it was just, anyone who's been to any of the Unified games, you know what special events they are. This event, we happen to think is extra special. It's our Pittsburgh teams playing against each other, and just to see our community pack this gym, standing room only, to support students who may have never had an opportunity to have that kind of community support before is so special. And it's really become more than just one great night. Having these relationships so that kids are now seeing each other, calling each other by name in the hallways, giving high fives. We started last year doing a victory parade after the Unified game. And they did that again this year. And I can't tell you, to see this team of students come down the hallway and to see every student and teacher in the building come out and flood the hallways and give the kids high fives as they walk around with Mr. Wall with his megaphone. It is just, it's so special. It's really great, and so it's really added to that culture of inclusion. So a couple of things that you might have noticed this year walking around Barker Road, we really, as the Student Inclusivity Council, really wanted to highlight some of the different areas that we feel like we haven't had an opportunity to do in the past. And so we started with Black History Month. There's even things we would change about that now. We don't want to celebrate Black History Month. We want to celebrate Black history. And so some of the things, these are starting points for us. And so it's been a great way just for us to start conversations. And some of us who are a little more controlling let the kids have control over it, and not all the posters are perfect, but they are really getting a voice in it and making it what they want it to be. So to see the kids come together after school to research quotes that they wanted to share, they got on every Friday and the morning announcements in the month of February and shared quotes and stories from historical figures and current Black figures in our own current events, and shared those. And then, of course, Mr. Wall combining that with music and pictures. And so we really had a great approach to just having some more awareness. And then we have one other piece I'm going to share in a moment that we took on. But the other piece that was really important as we're educating our students and working together to bring more awareness is how do we bring more awareness to our staff? And I feel like they're so hungry for these opportunities to be able to work together and to talk about inclusion. So we had several activities that we were able to bring to them and to bring across the district. The district supported myself and 2 other administrators going to the ASCD National Conference this year called Champions of Equity. And so we were able to bring back some of the learning from that to our PDLT, to our Parent Advisory Council, to our building ILT teams, and to our Inclusivity Advisory Council. And so some of that work has now been brought to the building level. So one of the things that we did on Superintendent's Day was had all of the teachers look through that Inclusivity Advisory Council success statement to really mark it up, to annotate what are things that really stand out as the big items that connect to them personally. What are things that they feel like we're already doing within the curriculum? So what we really wanted teachers to do is to look at not just the best buddies, the web leaders, the big things that we can see, but if it's not being brought into the everyday instruction that's happening in classrooms and not being naturally embedded, then we're probably not hitting the mark there. So having teachers look at what are things in our curriculum and in the ways that we're working with kids that connect to the success statement, and then what are things that we feel like we need to leverage to move to the next step and to continue to improve on. So teachers did a lot of that work on Superintendent's Day, and then they did a gallery walk where they were able to go through and see what each other were doing in different departments. And so that helped me just as much as anyone else, because I was able to go through and see so many of the things that are happening that I wouldn't have normally known about. So for instance, our speech teacher ran to her room and came back, and she had already had her students break down the success statement and put it into student-friendly language. And so that's the one that you see here. So they had just busted that out in the middle of Superintendent's Day. None of us knew that had been happening, but the kids had already kind of rewritten it themselves in student language, and then they put some of the other pieces that they felt like we may already be doing, and then some things that we really may be opportunities to continue moving forward. So it's been really exciting work. We recognize we're just taking inches forward, but it feels great to have the kids really helping us lead that movement. And one of the things, we stopped and saw this on our board tour before the break, for Women's History Month, we had students create on paper chains one woman who inspired them. We asked them to not just write mom, but to actually write the name of the person who inspired them. And many students did multiple women who were inspiring to them, and we created this amazing paper chain. It's very beautiful and colorful that has all of these inspiring females in our students' lives or in history, and that is outside our cafeteria in the Commons area. And speaking of strong, inspiring women, this year, Mrs. Sealer is retiring as our assistant principal, and she has many of those slips of paper with her name on them. She is, I believe, has the longest career as an administrator in Pittsford and is truly irreplaceable, and she is just the heart of Barker Road. She is being honored at the Pittsford PTSA Lifetime Membership awards ceremony coming up. And anyone who has ever nominated someone for that, you can really pull teeth to get those 6, 7 letters, and you're chasing people down. It's a busy time of year. So we had, I think, 30 letters come in for Terry that represented over 100 people. So it's such a tribute to her and to everything that she's done for us. So thank you so much, Terry, for everything. And that's all I have.
Sheena, that was so comprehensive. Thank you so much. You provided so much information that was extremely beneficial for all of us. Terry, thank you so much. Just, you're sitting there and I can see the emotion in your face, but thank you for all the years of service. We really appreciate it. And you obviously had an impact on so many lives, so thank you for your years. Does anyone have any questions for Shana? No? It was fantastic. Shana, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.